I'm live. What do I do over here? Banners, comments. Okay. Let me give it just a few minutes. Make sure I can hear the sound. Get a few people on. Man, we're having a bad storm down here right now. Oh shit. My volume, let me make sure it's up. And I gotta fly right off the rip. Man, my volume's low. Man, my volume. Damn, I hope this isn't. Well, let's just see. Okay, so let me make sure something. Let's just see. Okay, so yeah, it is low. All right. Anyway, tonight I have a special guest. His name's Eyone Williams. He hosts or runs the show, or started the show, DC Blacks. I became acquainted with him. I watched some content that he had, him as well as me, and through a mutual friend, we contacted each other. That's Seth Fronte. I got to give him a shout out. So I was trying to wait for a few more people to come in. I am a little early, but this will be recorded after. So I'm gonna go ahead, get some tobacco, and get Eyone in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up? How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good. You can't hear me fine though?
I hear you perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, what's up? How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good. Okay. Yeah, now I got it. Now that we're both on, it's better. Okay. So I'm doing good. All right. First of all, I appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Okay. So what I want to do, and I like to do with guests, is I'd like to start is with your background, okay? Where you're from, what that was like growing up when you were a kid, and if you can get into some family dynamics, you know, that just to show the character, or you know, as much as you want to reveal.
Sure. I'm from Washington, D.C. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Anybody know anything about history from Washington, D.C. in the late 90s? D.C. was the murder capital. So I grew up in that type of environment. Um, as far as what life was like for me, I think, man, I don't think I had a spectacular hell of a story I can tell you about my youth. I grew up, man, I was attracted to football, basketball, television, the regular stuff, inner city youth were attracted to, so to speak. And towards my teenage years, I got attracted to the street life and started selling drugs, and that led to, criminal activity, and I was charged with homicide at 16 and charged as an adult. That's moving kind of fast. I think, you asked me something just about parents and growing up. I think everything in my lifestyle back then was probably, what people would call middle class. I don't have no real rags to riches story to tell either.
Okay. So just to be clear, so what age did you start getting into the street life? So you talked about sports as a kid, right? So
Yeah.
what age did you start in crime?
I guess you could say significant crime where the police come in for you, probably about 12 or 13 years old, but I mean, that's just gun charges and stolen car, little mischievous stuff. But once you start selling drugs or you get into, robbery and a gunplay coming, they start charging you as a adult, then that might be a little bit more significant. I got charged as a adult at 16, but I probably started getting arrested at 12 or 13 years old going to juvenile. You from California, right?
I'm from California, yeah.
Yeah, so y'all go to YA when y'all before y'all 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did a couple little took a couple trips to what we call juvenile here. You know, it wasn't long either. By the time I graduated of court.
Okay. So your first big case as an adult, you were how old?
16. That's the only case I got ever. Yeah.
Okay. So 16. So what was the circumstance? What'd you go down for?
They charged me with first degree murder, assault with intent to kill, armed robbery. But if I just had to dumb that down to some regular terms and not try to glorify none of it, it really was technically what I would say a drug deal gone bad. I can't glorify it or make it seem like some type of Hollywood movie. It was just a drug deal gone bad. And, I was young, I was aggressive, and I don't think I had enough understanding to deal with a dispute in a drug deal.
Okay, real quick before you go any further, they're saying you've got an echo in your microphone or in the background.
Oh, that's me? That
Yeah.
was you. I don't know what we can do about that, right?
Okay, let me see.
I ain't got a real microphone. I'm using a computer microphone.
That's what I'm doing too. Okay. So okay, let's I can hear you good. Let's go with it, okay? Let's just do this. Okay, because I'm like I said, I can hear you good, okay?
Yeah, but I hear the echo too. I don't know what to do though.
Okay, so somebody's saying now it's not. I think you're getting a little clear. Maybe
I cut it down. I thought maybe it was too loud.
Okay, I think that's better. Like now, go ahead. Talk for a second.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
You said
I cut it down a little bit. Maybe that'll help. But I still hear.
Somebody said make sure he has YouTube shut down on his side, but whatever. I like I said.
On my side?
Yeah.
Well, that's supposed to help.
That's what he said.
Well, I don't know how to do
that. It's like the blind leading the blind, man.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Okay, so good, but okay, so it is better. It is better. People are saying that, all right. So there's a time. It's better. It's
always
good. Yeah, so they're saying it's better. Okay, so look, so tell me, so I'm sorry because it was echoing. Repeat that. So how did you go down for an adult? What was the circumstances?
Well, the way I just tried to politely and eloquently tell you it was a drug deal gone bad.
Gotcha.
I got charged with first degree murder, assault with intent to kill, and armed robbery at 16. 16 in DC, if you get charged with some crimes like that, you automatically go to adult court. And to try to explain it to you and your audience without justifying it or glorifying it, I was telling you that basically it was a drug deal gone bad.
Okay, all right. So you went through the court process. What jail were you being held in at that time?
DC jail.
Okay. What was it like then?
Man, DC jail was a violent, aggressive, intense place. I mean, and at the time that I was sent to DC jail, it was an epidemic of violence in DC. So all the guys that were supposed to be in the newspaper that did certain things, they were over there at that time and they contributed to the culture. For me to be a teenager to grow up in that environment, it was a shock to say the least.
Okay, and you're from DC. You had family from DC, right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in DC, Washington, DC.
So as a youngster, did you have a bad time, or because of some older people that you knew, or what was it?
In jail?
Yeah.
Well, when I first went to jail, it was kind of early man for yourself because I was in the juvenile block. A lot of politics it don't really apply there, so to speak. But when I'm saying a lot of politics don't apply there, when I got to Lorton, there were other people I knew, but to just stay in the juvenile block of the DC jail before you get transferred to an adult facility. Your friends that you may have from juvenile or school or sports may be there, but when I was in the juvenile block, we were held in a part of the DC jail that was called North One, and they called that like a gladiator school. So at that point in time, you just kind of like people getting to know each other, man. I don't want to say like you're earning those stripes because it's not really that like that. But you know, as you go through juvenile facilities and then young adult places, people learn each other. You see people frequently over and over again, and it's unfortunately going through the system. But by the time I got down Lorton, I knew a couple people because unfortunately my father was there before me. But the transition for me from jail to prison, I must say, you know, it was definitely it was a challenge. I mean, you know, you get induced to things like knife fights. I mean, I even tried to escape. Like all your criminal convict elements of life spill into your food slap when you're over to jail. So all those things came my way too.
Okay. What is it? So tell me, do you got how much time did you get exactly for that
I got
trip?
15 to life. We used to get the two numbers back then. I got 15 to life. I served 17 years on 15 to life.
Okay. So you went to Lorton for how many years? So first of all, describe Lorton for me, if you can.
All right, there's a lot of people say Lorton, they think it's one big old prison or something. Lorton, for real, it's called the Lorton Reformatory or Correctional Complex. So it's about 8 different prisons in this Lorton complex. Lorton was in Virginia. It was a prison system that was only to house DC prisoners, right? And it had a Lorton was around for about 91 years. It had almost 100-year existence, so it had a bunch of history. And notoriously, when they talk about old prisons, violent prisons, people mention it in the likes of prisons like Angola or San Quentin, Eastern, even though that's far out of the age range. But it's just one of those old, what you would consider a state prison, but we're not a state, but you could consider it a state prison. Just one of those old prisons that, man, they send people there to forever. And, you know, it's ran by the prison, you know, it's ran by the prisoners, so to speak. When I say that, you know, a lot of people that may watch prison genre TV or YouTube understand those old prisons where they say it's ran by the prisoners. The people in there is just as powerful as the warden or whoever sent you there. But it's a place that just gives you education in crime, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a good opportunity. Um, so to copy something that Seth Ferranti says, street legends. I think this is a time to give some of the dudes in DC, or to talk about, or to mention some of the names that are historical, or that stand out, or that were big prison legends slash street legends. And I'm not trying to hype them up. I'm trying to just give them their props as being all convicts. You know what I'm saying?
So you say who are some? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, just sticking to the arena that I think you and I talk about things, and of course you were like a folklore or street legend or folk legend. You will hear about people named like Raymond Smith, Raymond Cadillac Smith. If you into prison genre, these are names you will hear down there. Connecting it to the federal system, you hear other names like William Delote, Vernon Cooper. Some of these guys, these are names that may not be household names, but you talking about certain type of legends like in Seth's book, these names go back to Alcatraz. Some of those names that Seth had in his book that are DC guys, it's kind of a difference in their legendary status, so to speak. Like for an example, some of those guys had humongous names in the streets when Seth wrote about them, but they were new to the prison system, which is why I just said it depends on what you consider an legend. So I mentioned a lot of guys that had street and penitentiary legendary status to their name, so to speak. But a lot of those guys that he wrote about in the book that you mentioned, shout out to Seth, and I read Street Legends 1 and 2. But some of those guys that had humongous, bigger than life street reputations, those are the guys that I told you I met while I was at DC jail. Those are the guys that was housed in the jail with us at the time. So those guys definitely shape and mold the street culture of Washington D.C. Some of those street guys that he talk about, some of those guys got more influence than the president.
Yeah. And Lorton was shut down what year and why?
Well, Lorton was shut down in 2001 exactly. But to say why, we could talk for hours on why. But ultimately, something called the the Federal Revitalization Act, something Congress basically put through for many reasons, bigger than what I fully can explain. I think that it was a bit of corruption, a bit of uh, being too expensive to run, and a little bit of Virginia maybe wanting the DC convicts out of the state of Virginia and Northern Virginia not wanting to be there. But ultimately, it came down to some decisions by Congress to do certain things where the property was, and to do certain things with the budget for the District of Columbia. People who don't know, they may grew up in a state like you're from California. If you catch a state case in California, the governor of that state is in control of you, basically your property of that governor. In the District of Columbia, just like you also have been to the federal system, if you get sentenced in federal court, you're sentenced to the custody of the United States Attorney General, which today will be paying bond. In the District of Columbia, as long as the charge that you are charged with is a felony and not a misdemeanor, every time you go into a courtroom, be it Superior Court, which is our small court, or Federal Court, which is the big boy court, you're gonna be sentenced to the custody of the Attorney General. So you could go to Lorton or you could go to the feds, but Lorton closed in 2001 because of the Revitalization Act, and it sent all, whether it was a federal case or what we call a local case, guy, a big guy or small, a little guy, straight to the feds, which is why you have all those problems with DC seeming to overrun some of the prisons in number.
So, so what did determine back in the day whether they were sent to the feds or Lorton when Lorton was still open? Was there any criteria? Was there something specific? That might be a dumb question, but
that's a great question. I mean, from a person from another state, it also got experience and understanding of how the federal courts work. I think it's a good question. So to explain it without confusing people, the first criteria, in my opinion, is what court you come out of. If you come out of a federal court, you go into the feds anyway. There's nothing to talk about, okay? We got those guys. So those guys that you may have met when you were in prison and they had an 016 number,
yeah,
you know that they came out of federal court. There's no discussion. Now, secondarily, going back in the day and coming all the way up, you have guys like Cadillac, who named ring throughout the federal system, talking this DC federal stuff over and over. Now, these guys, some of these guys went to court before there were two courts in DC. Before 1971 or 70, in the early 70s, Washington, D.C. created a whole different court. Other than that, no matter what crime you committed, you went to federal court, okay? When they created what's called Superior Court, which I believe was created in 1976, but I don't got my numbers in my head right there, but somewhere around there. Then they created a court that they called General Sessions. Feds had this. So if you had an armed robbery, a pickpocket, some BS, even a murder charge, that's a regular street charge, you go to Superior Court. But if you were a handful, not to get too far off track, but if you were a handful in Lorton and you were one of those guys that were, kind of bigger than the system, they would send you to the feds as well. So a lot of those guys, they got sent from Lorton to the feds back in the 70s. And they were calling them problem inmates, and that term DC Black was placed on a group of guys. Those were a lot of the guys that came from Lorton, went to the feds, that Lorton just couldn't control those guys no more. So I think that would be the answer to your question. First of all, if you come out federal court, you're going to the feds. Nowadays, there's no prison or center, so we all going to the feds. But I assume you asked that question about guys that were in the feds when Lorton was open.
Yeah, I was. And before I get off Lorton, bring me back in time. So how long was it open, and what? So when you think of Lorton, when guys my age think of Lorton, you think of all black prison, okay? So two questions. You mentioned to me on a phone call about Lorton that it was really, the color was real white before. I don't know what time it shifted, but that's what I'm asking you. And also, when you were there, were there white guys there, and how were they treated? That's what.
Okay. According to my research, and I wasn't alive, I used the Washington Post archives and the Washington Times archives for some research that I wrote. I wrote a book by the name of Lorton Legends, and I wanted to do, it's a fiction book, but I wanted to be I wanted to write a book that was a fiction book that had a non-fiction background, if you dig what I'm saying. So it's almost like I wrote a love story in Germany's 1940, but I still use World War II as the backdrop, if you dig what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was good. That was good,
All
man.
right, cool. So in the process of doing that, I wanted to know the history of it. So I went all the way back to the 50s. But Lorton was open in the 1910s, and the penitentiary part, which is called maximum security, was opened in 1930. So that gives you an idea. The first piece of land was broken in 1910. Prison that was built with the wall that is considered the penitentiary, which is maximum security, started construction in 1930 and finished shortly after. But some point in time between the 1930s and the 1950s, Lorton was predominantly white. Uh-oh, you got a friend on the camera.
I think it's a fly straight up.
Yeah, it is.
That's what.
That's crazy.
Man, yeah, it was. Hey,
Yeah.
I have so many. Every video, every live, even today there was a fly swatter in my video in the back. Dude, I'm under attack. Anyway, go. That's crazy. Go ahead.
So I definitely read about some riots that occurred in the 50s where the majority of the prisoners were white. But I don't want to give a specific date on that because I didn't do a whole bunch of research on it. I'm gonna do it now because it's some of those old archives and pictures, and some of the earlier reports of what you would consider. I don't want to really use race riot because I don't think that's what it was, but it was some racial tension in Lorton at an early time when they began to integrate. So I'm talking about before the 60s, and it had to be notable enough to make the paper. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the extent of the knowledge that I have about that. And you also asked were they white guys there when I was there? Yeah, they were a handful. And when I say handful, I do mean a handful. Now, however, it was a white guy. I don't remember his last name, but somebody may see this broadcast and remember it was a guy. I'm not even gonna call him a white boy or just a white guy. It was a white man by the name of Scotty. He was a professional boxer. He taught a lot of black guys how to box. I don't know if his name ranked what he did with the legendary trainers and all the how the jailhouse law go, but I met him in my time, and I never seen nobody play with him. His respect was bigger than race. You dig what I'm saying? He wasn't no guy. That's a white guy. You say, oh, he's a thorough white guy. He was a thorough dude. Period. Now, of course, I seen a couple other white guys that came through. Unfortunately, they weren't criminal like. You get what I'm saying? Like this guy who I'm talking about, you know what I mean? He was a convict. You could have put him in Lorton or Louisiana, it wouldn't have made a difference.
I got you.
That's one that definitely stand out. And then I had a dude from my neighborhood that was he was white, and he just so happened to grow up with us. I'm not gonna say he act like he was black, but he had urban weight.
Okay, I was checking out a comment while you were saying that. All right, so when were you first? So you went. I'm here to say you went into the federal system. When were you first notified you were going into the feds, and how was that experience?
Oh, my man said, I see one of my guys on here said, Rick said, Henry B can help us with that. Maybe we do need to talk to some of those old guys that remember about what I was talking about with the black and white thing. Maybe we could come on here and do that together again, because I'm going to investigate that now. But I was never notified that I was going to the feds, like, due process wise. To be honest with you, I discovered that we were going to be leaving my group of Lorton, my generation of Lorton guys. My man Anton White always said he was already in the feds before we came in, that the feds were saying the dirty 40s coming because they would send us by buses of 40. So I was in that generation of guys that came. I actually came to Leavenworth in a motorcade, 2 prison buses. 80 of us came that day.
Okay.
But I learned that they were going to start sending us to the feds in the Washington Post, because it used to be almost, and I'm speaking only for myself, because some guys in Lorton really wanted to go to the feds. They wanted an opportunity to get better food, better education, and meet different type of people. I didn't understand that back then because I was young and I was close to home. So that meant every visit came with the potential. If I'm emphasizing the word potential too. Every visit in Lorton came with the potential of street food, party drugs, and you know the hard drugs included the party drugs in prison, and sometimes sex with your loved one. You dig? So nobody in my age range wanted to give that up for the feds. Now maybe a guy that had been in forever and didn't have a lot of street connections, you know, maybe he wanted to rush there. But for me, I used to hate it 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning when they came around with secret loads and just hit your box like pack up, pack up, pack up. You don't know where you're going. In fact, when we finally did, and I can tell you that story in the whole breath. But when I finally did get sent to on the road, I didn't go straight to the feds. We spent 3, 4 years in these private prisons, which is a whole nother conversation. But when they grabbed us, they packed our property, and I never saw my property again for 2, 3 months on that one. And that's just on that note. I know dudes that just didn't catch their law work again for 6, 7, 8 months. But one thing I do remember off the top of my head that was funny is that since they packed my property up back then, they packed my knife up too. And when they sent my property, they sent me my knife. And that was kind of good because they sent it to this place called Youngstown, Ohio. And that joint was plagued with assaults and murder.
Yeah, so the CCA?
CCA, yeah.
Core Civic.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That place is, I was going to do stuff about that because, I mean, you went there. But
I was there, you know, it changed over. When I was there, it was only for DC.
Okay.
I don't want to say that we shut it down, but kind of like we did shut that contract down. Then they kept the institution and they got other contracts. Like I believe right now, Youngstown, Ohio, the CCA is in contracts with immigration and U.S. Marshals. So you might run into a guy that's being held by ICE, or you may run into a guy that's coming back to that part of the country from the feds on a writ to go to court for something he did somewhere else. Like you may run into anybody there now, but when I was there, it was only for DC, and that probably was a grave mistake that they made when they took the DC prisoners that came from Lorton closing. Because one day you spoke about something, and I can speak on that right now. You spoke about how, you know, the DCs or the DC blacks, I forgot what term you used. And either term you used was cool. You was like, they're not one group. I think you used the word faction or section.
Yeah.
Both of those, I wouldn't argue with any of those words, but you know, I will clarify that, you know, it's groups and generations. You know what I mean? And some people never operated as a unit or a gang or a structure. They just come from a place which is DC, whereas though if you are a type of guy like me, you're gonna support the homies regardless. It's not a gang thing. But you know, I'm sure I remember one day you did a show. I watched one of your shows. You was talking about some of the guys that just try to stay out the way. I've met DC guys. The dudes don't even know they're from DC. Have you met any guys like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, now you got some guys now, even they got a 007 number, so you'll know it, but they distance themselves. But I know guys that got numbers like 003 and 054 because they put their cases in other places. And one of them, who I'm thinking, I'm not gonna mention his name because he a real private dude, but he is so religious, you would never know what his geographical situation is unless one of his true friends, right? And this guy's a convict, so I'm not gonna go into the straight up square guy.
Okay.
One of his true friends from his younger day when he was on what we call homie time. Other than that, he don't care about the young guys. He don't care about the DC problems. All he care about is what he's doing.
Right. I got you. Okay. So what was you went to Leavenworth first? Is that where you landed, or where did you land in the feds first?
Compound wise, being as though that's your question. The first compound I was ever on was Lee County, Virginia. But Leavenworth, like, if I just was one of those guys that wanted a resume of all the tough jokes, I would say, yeah, I've been to Leavenworth. But technically, it was too many of us that came that week.
Yes.
And Leavenworth was like, hell no,
I was there.
Not doing it.
I was there, man.
I my phone rang. And Leavenworth was like, hell no, we not doing it. And we don't know what the hell is wrong with Washington. But the week that I came, it sent 2 buses there every day, Monday to Friday.
I believe there was 400 was the number that landed.
Well, I heard that number. I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to sound like I was exaggerating.
Yeah.
But I came on a bus of 44 people, and it was a bus of 40 behind us. They said that the day before they had just got the same load, and I remember the institution I was in when they was doing just this one load, because this was happening for years, Rob. This was just my experience. Like this
Yeah.
was going on for about a 10-year process. I found Washington Post articles that labeled us nomadic prisoners with no home. I mean, you know how that go, but that was the sensational headline.
Yeah.
But when we got there that day, I never forget. The one thing I do remember about Leavenworth, I came there in the summertime, okay? So it was hot on the bus. It was hot when we got off the bus. But when I walked inside the prison, it was another level of hot. And I said, damn, they call this on the hot house. They not lying. This is really the hot. The heat was a whole nother creature.
You
Like
went to
it was
building
another
63.
element of, huh?
63. They put you in building 63.
That's where we ultimately went. Yeah.
Ah, man, that is. I did the summer in there. Brutal, brutal.
I didn't even know you could house people like that in the United States.
Man, and we caused such a man. We caused all kinds of problems in there because it was so hot, man. And they took the fans from us for 3 days one time because one of the dudes I was with threw feces on and off.
You still there? Uh-oh. Yo, yo.